off initiative. Briefly, what it is to get an initiative on the city's ballot for November 2010, ideally, which would amend Section 218 of the Los Angeles City Charter. And we can do that very simply by adding one word. All we have to do is insert the word half in the section that talks about the salaries of the city council members. Presently, they're paid about $179,000. This would cut them to about 50% of that. It would allow them to keep getting the automatic raises year after year as the Superior Court judges get them. But we'd be hitting the reset button and moving them from the $179,000 they're getting now to about $89,000 plus. It would also cut by half the salary of the city controller, the city attorney, and Mayor Villaraigosa. We'll be getting materials together, getting a website together, and so on and so forth. What we're looking at is doing a publicity campaign first. Hopefully that will be kicked off around Labor Day, and we'll go out, we'll hit all the neighborhood councils, all the neighborhood council alliances, other organizations. I know Michael has had some discussion with the Howard Jarvis taxpayers people, for instance. But what we want to do is get to a point where everybody in the city of Los Angeles knows what half off means, so that we don't have to spend time when we get to the signature gathering phase talking about it. They'll see a half off sign or a half off button and go, okay, give me that clipboard and I'll sign it. That's what we want to do, ideally. We're going to need probably, well, required signatures is 239,442. That's LA registered voters, City of LA registered voters. I know, that's a lot.
No, we can do it. No, it's not.
15% of registered voters. Ideally, we're probably going to have to go about 30 to 50% more than that to get the valid number. It sounds like a lot, but the reality is you break it down into manageable chunks, and if we can get enough volunteers who are willing to commit, I figure a minimum of 10 hours standing out in front of Vons or Albertsons or CVS. If we get enough of them around the city, we can do it, particularly if we get the right publicity and get the message out ahead of time so that they're spending their time getting signatures and not explaining to people what it is. Very simple. Depends on when you start. There's a point where you write a letter, a notice of intent to circulate. You give it to the city clerk, they give it to the city attorney, they check your language, which we suspect will happen very quickly once they get the paperwork from us. Paperwork will probably go to them in, what did we,
sort of late November.
what did we decide on that? January, maybe?
No, it was December, I thought.
Yeah, a real quick summary of the process itself. Forget about us getting the signatures.
Right, yeah.
This is pre-signature.
The numbers.
Yeah, we come up with the intent, we come up with a ballot measure, it goes to the city clerk, they look at it, send it on to the city attorney, he has 2 weeks to come up with a title and a summary. It goes back to the city clerk, who pretty much immediately notifies us that the clock has started running. The clock runs for 180 days.
6 months.
Right. There's a little bit of a slop in there. We don't really have to go into details. But we need 200. Well, they'll give us the exact number at the time because it'll change. If they get the numbers from Sacramento, how many registered voters you have in the city. And let's just say for 240,000 will be the number, and it probably won't be too much off. That has to be valid signatures, and these are signatures that are residents of the city of Los Angeles and are registered to vote at their address. So anyone that moves, no, doesn't work. The signature gatherers don't have to be registered voters, it turns out. They just have to be qualified to be a registered voter. In other words, they have to be either a citizen or a resident or a legal resident of the, I guess, the city.
United States.
United States. So that's good.
And they have to be 18.
Right. We really need about 300,000, maybe 320,000, because you're going to get a lot of duds. You're going to get a lot of bad signatures, especially if you're standing out in front of Vons or Albertsons. You're just going to collect a lot of bad signatures. So 300, 320 is kind of like really the ballpark. If you consider that there's 1,800.
When are they due by to get on the November?
180. We have 180 days to get it in. Then there's a window as to whether or not they'll call a special election if it's within 88 days of our submitting the signatures. I haven't verified the exact number, but it's approximately 88 days. They have to call a special election and then have the ballot measure. If we're close enough to the consolidated election in November, it'll go on the November ballot, which is probably what we want. But then we can discuss this as a strategy. But essentially, that's how it works. 180 days and you're dead. Not quite. If they run a sample on it, and they do a sampling technique as well, but if they find that you're short, they'll give you another 10 days. They'll give you one extra bite at the apple. You don't get 190 days, you get 180, and then just move the whole 180 process over 10 days. So if at the beginning you only got a few signatures, you might have a chance of making it. So this is only if you're, obviously, if you're fairly close. That's really basically the process. Now, like I said, we have 1,800 people in neighborhood councils. If you got half of those, say 1,000, to actually be active in filling out petitions, that would be, they would have to get 300 petition signatures of each person. It's a lot of work. That's the bad part. The good part is, I think we can do it, because with Measure B, people just came out of the woodwork from everywhere. And we're going to get unions and everybody involved. And we're going to have a website. You can actually have a downloadable copy. Found this out on the website. You can download it. Someone can download it, get their 2 or 3 neighbors, and then submit it back. They don't have to get the hundreds. So we can have a lot of grassroots participation.
One of the people who's here is Art Toledo, who's run ground campaigns in an organized fashion. And when we talk about getting 240 or 300,000 signatures for a half, cut the bastard salaries in half, what's your reaction? Is it doable? You've run organized ground campaigns.
Yeah, it's doable. It would be hard, but not impossible.
Yeah, I gave you some perspective. Maybe you can back me up on, or if you're familiar with it.
Okay.
During the 2000 and, what was it, 4 or 5, the recall of Fred Davis, initially nobody took the, and this is a statewide ballot measure to recall Davis, no one took it seriously until one of the assemblymen, representatives, I think Darrell Issa,
From San Diego, and
yeah,
John and Ken.
pledged to contribute for $2 million. I think they actually pledged, they actually gave out $1.7 million, and they had to get roughly something like 900,000 signatures. That's only 3 times more than we need, and that was statewide, and they had $2 million and a lot of people.
Can I elaborate on that, Rachel, what you're saying?
So
They paid for signatures.
Oh, yeah. And they used that money to pay
So,
for
you know, don't think it was just done from here, it's money.
Right.
But we're talking about doing it from here.
Yeah, we're talking about getting a lot of people and being very active.
Then you're gonna have to put a material out there that's gonna educate them, so like you said earlier.
That's the whole key to it.
Educate.
Yep.
We did exactly that with defeating Measure B. We even had less time than Measure B. We really didn't even ramp up until like January. You know, basically it was what, December, January, we started ramping up. We had 2-3 months. So we'll have the luxury of a pretty long period of time.
Belinda.
Let's go Belinda and then Monica, some questions. Belinda.
Okay, for close to 15 years, my ex-husband and I ran a petition gathering company. And basically what you need to do is train the people. If people are willing, they'll say, yes, I'll do it, but then they'll drag their feet. But if you have organizers who get out there and you have area, people who are captains and go out there and have their crew and set them out and commit them to times and go out and supervise what they're doing. And you don't have to pay them. I mean, we did pay them, but it was easy and to get, you're talking, if you're good, 35, to 65 signatures an hour, easy, because you sit and I'd be willing to help train, the people. I used to consider.
You're hired.
I used to consider.
I know where she lives.
I used to consider what I did, assertiveness training for people who were unhireable. Because I taught them how to approach other people, and the biggest thing that there is, the hardest part about gathering a signature is to be approachable. Yeah, is to be approachable, and to have people, once they realize that they're not giving you any money, and all they're doing is they're not necessarily voting on the issue, they're getting it on the ballot. It's a piece of cake, not a piece of cake, but it's easy to do. It's easy to do.
Monica